right now. Racism, unemployment, all of those things. I know that everyone is going through a shift, or most people have been experiencing negative emotions. And so this is what this session is here to do, is to help you navigate grief. A little bit about Grills and Granola. We are a fitness company, but we create wellness experiences specifically for women of color and communities of color. So we've done things like mental health first aid trainings for free. We also do fitness classes, wellness conferences, etc. And this session is going to be led by an amazing woman named Kerry Baharanyi. And I just want to read off her bio before we get started, because I'm going to pass it on over to her. Kerry is a licensed independent clinical social worker with a private independent practice with a concentration in clinical social work, social casework, and social work administration. She provides wellness consultations and coaching for anyone in the state of Alabama and outside of Alabama. She's engaged in a lot of community activism and work. She's also a poet and has over 10 years of experience practicing astrology psychology. So she reads natal charts and astrology assessments, and it's really dope. She completes these natal charts because she wants people to be open to the boundless ways that they can find their self-actualization. She's also interested in working with, and has worked with, people living with HIV/AIDS, immigrant communities, sexual, race minorities, all of that through civic engagement. Kerry's main goal is to provide you with the tools to make the best decisions for your life. She would like to shed light on the thought patterns, our experiences, the labels that we give and how the labels that we give ourselves can hinder our ability to be healthier. After all, you are the expert of your life, and she will work alongside you, with you, to remind you that, again, you do matter and you have the ability to change your life and live your purpose. And so today's session, it's all about grief. How do you identify it? How do you manage it? How do you overcome it? So I'm going to pass it on over to Kerry, and she is going to take it away. Just as a ground rule, we are going to make space to answer questions that you may have. But for the sake of, management and volume and stuff, make sure you put all of your questions in the chat. So I'm going to turn it on over to you, Kerry, and I am going to unmute you and make you
good.
All right, you are officially in control.
Hi guys, how are you? Can you hear me? Welcome. I am so glad and so delighted to be here. I wanted to go ahead and I'm going to share my screen a little bit, if that's okay with you guys. We're going to talk about grief today. And I'm so glad you guys are here with me. So we're going to start here. Okay. I hope you guys can see this. Okay, let's see. Can you guys see my screen?
We cannot. If you can share it.
Hold on. Okay, I'm gonna go here and we're gonna go to here. Okay. So just like Siobhan stated, we're gonna talk about grief, right? The stages of grief. We're gonna find out how to identify, manage, and unpack our emotions. And I'm encouraging you, all of you guys, to have a paper note, right? Or whatever you use so that you can actually listen, unpack, and pay attention. I was gonna create a safe place for all of us. First of all, thank you to Grills and Granola, because she's creating a safe place for all of us. And Siobhan is such a food soldier, right? So please also go on her website to just see the services that she provides. I also want to remind you that today we have a wellness coaching. So I'm not diagnosing anyone or providing in-depth therapy. So please take care of yourself in the process. If for some reason during our session, you probably triggered, it's okay to step away, then come back. Or if you need to call your therapist, someone from your group support, please do so. I'm also giving you guys the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, just in case, maybe for you or for your friend, right? The number is 1-800-273-8255. We are all in this together. So I want to ask you, I'm asking the question, can we overcome grief? This is not a simple answer as yes or no. What we can do is we can learn to live with grief, but we have to commit in understanding, unpacking, and managing our emotions. Managing grief is a life process experience, right? You have to take it one day at a time. And for some of us, we have to take it even 1 hour at a time, okay? So what is grief? There are many definitions of grief, right? But if you check online, you're gonna see we talk about deep sorrow, loss, mourning, and many more. Today, I wanted to focus on the Kubler-Ross 5 stages of grief. And I have to tell you, over the years, there have been many research on grief. A lot of books, they don't only have 5 stages, they may have 6, 7, 8 stages. I just want you to know that there's no one stage fit all, right? You have to find your own space when you think about the stages of grief. So if we're using the 5 stages of grief of Kubler-Ross, she talks about denial, right, as the first stage of grief. What is denial? I want you to think when something really traumatic happens to you. In the moment, you have a hard time grasping, right? You're asking yourself, what is happening to me? And sometimes you can feel so isolated and you feel alone. And then she has the second stage that she calls anger. Anger is when you ask yourself or you think, why is this happening to me? It's kind of that state of feeling the unfair situation has happened to you or to your loved one. What is bargaining? Bargaining is, again, maybe not fully grasping what's happening, and you're trying to find closure. So you may ask yourself a few questions. Maybe if I do this, something else will come back. So you're just in the space of processing to find closure. And then we all have heard and felt depression. Depression, that's where you get in that space of hopelessness and helplessness, right? Because you need something to hold on, but it's very challenging. And then last one, we have, of course, acceptance. That's when you tell yourself, it is what it is. I am understanding what I'm going through. And you probably are asking yourself, what is the next step? Okay? I want you to make sure you Google the emotion wheel. Many of us have a hard time pinpointing our emotions. If I ask you, how are you feeling today? You're probably gonna say the same thing you usually say, I'm good, I'm bad, I'm sad. But when you have an emotional wheel, you can actually pinpoint the different facets of the emotion. And for all of you guys who love to use technology, you can use your phone. There are many apps out there about your emotion. So this is one that I want you to know, even though today, for our stages of grief, we're using Kubler-Ross model of the 5 stages. I want you to know that you can feel fear, different kind of spaces. You can feel sad, you can feel heartbroken, right? So I want you to consider 2 things when we are unpacking grief. I want you to check, what is my personal grief? Maybe you've had someone who has passed away recently, a loved one, right? Maybe you're just breaking up with your boyfriend, your girlfriend, your partner. Maybe you are sick yourself, you're going through a process of realizing you have a chronic illness, right? That's a personal grief. The other part of grief, I want you to think about a collective grief, a cultural grief. What is the collective grief that we are all dealing with? We are living in a pandemic, right? We are dealing with it collectively, but also personally. And if you think cultural grief, I want you to think we've all seen you know, on TV, and we've been part of it, where Black bodies are getting murdered, right? So if you're even the movement of Black Lives Matter, if you're part of that community or just an ally, or you're part of this nation, guess what? You can feel that cultural grief, right? So I want you to unpack that and to write it in your notebook. I want you to write, what is my personal grief? What is my collective grief? What is my cultural grief, okay? Okay, so now let's start to unpack grief, right, together. And this is where I'm gonna start asking questions. Again, because this is a place we want to make it safe for all of us, but I have to tell you, do not share anything that you feel uncomfortable or anything that you feel can be used against you. I do believe we're in good hands, but just be responsible of the things that you feel ready to share, right? The first thing I want you to do, when I say unpacking grief, I want you to dismantle an emotion that you're feeling. Remember, if we go back to the stages of grief, let's just say you're feeling anger right now. And I ask you, how are you feeling? You just tell me anger. That's too heavy to unpack. We have to make it smaller, dismantle it so that we can digest it better. So when you create a safe place for your emotions, you're telling yourself, all my emotions are valid. I want you to release the idea of this is a good emotion, this is a bad emotion. I just want you to make connection with that emotion, okay? So I'm gonna ask you guys a few questions. I'm gonna go here to a place where I can see some of you guys. And then again, you can use the chat section. What is the emotion that you're feeling right now, right? Who can share that with us? What is an emotion that you're feeling right now? Anyone? Okay, let's see. I am going to see, let's see if I can unmute you guys and someone.
We're putting, it's all in the chat.
Okay, so who can tell me, let's see on the chat section, let me go to chat.
Oh, Kerry, we can't hear you. Can you unmute yourself?
Can you hear me?
Yes, now we can hear you.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
I think I had an issue. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a if you hover your mouse a little bit over the top when you're sharing your screen, you should get the options that appear
Yes.
on the sidebar for the chat box. It's
Can
just a
you
little
see
tricky
that?
when you're sharing your
Why?
Yeah.
So let's see. I'm going to the chat. I see that we have 7 people here. Hold on.
So overwhelmed.
So he said, okay. Siobhan, what do you see
so
people are saying?
People are overwhelmed, exhausted, tired, withdrawn, anxious, tired, withdrawn, exhausted, sad.
Thank you so much for sharing that, right? You guys are really getting deep with that emotion. I want you to think about that emotion. Let's just say feeling overwhelmed and sad. Let's use the sadness, right? I want you to start to make a difference between your primary emotions or primary emotion versus your secondary emotion. So let me ask you, when you feel sad, make a connection with that. before sadness, is there any emotion that you felt before that? So think about it. I want you to write it down. Let's go back in the chat, right? If you say, I felt sad, what was the emotion before sad? Did you maybe feel it in your body? Maybe you felt uncomfortable in the beginning. You felt frustrated. Or guess what? You just woke up one day and your body, you couldn't stop all the crying, right? That's the primary emotion. But because as adults, we are so busy with life, we usually miss those moments, right? So the primary emotion is not addressed. Do you know what happened? That primary emotion turns to something else. It turns to a different emotion. So sadness can be a primary emotion, or frustration, and then next thing you know, you are just very angry, for example, you're lashing out, right? It's because we did not make those connections. I see that Ms. Torres have a comment. Why? Okay. Ms. Torres, can you, I'm gonna unmute you, okay?
Oh, I wrote exhausted.
Exhausted. So let me ask you, Ms. Torres, right? Can I call you Isidora?
You can call me Isadora. Yeah, totally.
That's a beautiful name.
Thank
So
you.
Isidora, think about it, right? You say you feel exhausted. Is that what you say?
Yeah.
Do you think that's a primary emotion or a secondary emotion when you process or you feel that emotion? What do you think?
I think it's secondary. I think it's an output of different emotions.
Yes. So if we can do this exercise together, right? Try to connect the dots so that we can go back to an initial emotion or primary emotion. Before you felt exhausted, let me ask you, Zadora, how does your body talk to you, right? But you usually don't pay attention just because you're living life.
Yeah, my body definitely felt anxious, like tightness in chest, a lot of sadness.
Yes.
But sad, I guess, like sadness in the sense of just like watching my friends be hurt, watching the cold, like what's happening in the world, and that it feels really heavy on my heart. And so I noticed that my I've compared it to like being in a depression where my body feels very heavy, and like waking up feels harder to do because that motivation, the light or something that like pulls me to like be motivated, it just feels so dim.
Right.
And it just feels, I guess, an exhaustion is an output of just trying to get through the day, of trying to like put on a professional face, of trying to make process and make sense and still try to have, it's like, I mean, as like a non-Black person, it's just understanding and trying to comprehend and also trying to be supportive and just trying to do, I guess, whatever I can do.
Yes, absolutely.
And it's encouraging but also defeating and discouraging sometimes, and it's just trying to find the just trying. I think a lot of it's trying.
I know, I heard a lot of trying in that, right? So Isidora, thank you so much for sharing. We can all empathize, right? I want you to sit with that and remove the word trying and just use the word, I'm going to choose to be in this space with no judgment, with no stigma, with no shame, right? So thank you so much. Who else can empathize with Isidora and just share with us? So let's see. Siobhan, do you see anyone that we can unmute who has their hands up?
I don't see any hands up. I can speak from my personal experience.
Yes.
I think for me, my primary emotion is, I don't know if saying I feel like I'm out of control, but I feel like everything is spiraling. And so I reach and reach and reach, and I try to keep myself busy and distracted. And then the secondary emotion of that is that I start to feel overwhelmed and sad.
Yes. Absolutely. Thank you for sharing, Siobhan, right? Do you see, and Isadora and all of us, you see, when we make connection with our emotions, it's just a space of self-awareness. It's very important in the process. I want you to ask yourself, why do I feel this emotion? Isadora stated she feels, you know what, exhausted. Siobhan says sometimes she feels out of control. Come up with at least 5 reasons why you feel that emotion, right? And we're gonna go ahead, put in the chat section, share some of the reasons, and if you have your hand up, we can definitely share. So tell me or tell us, why do you feel that emotion? Okay, and then we're gonna wait for some of you guys to write it down and share. Siobhan, who do you think right now who has their hand up? They would like to share some of the reasons why.
I can share.
Okay, we have Graciela.
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, Graciela. Can you share some of the reasons with us?
Yeah, so I think that one of the underlining emotion is annoyed. I don't know if that's an emotion,
It
but
is.
that's how I felt.
Okay. Yes.
Um, and I think that I feel annoyed because I feel like I deserve better than the situation.
Yes. So let me ask you, Graciela, what is your emotion, your primary or secondary emotion that you've been able to pinpoint?
I'm feeling overwhelmed.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you gave me one of the reasons why?
Yeah.
So go ahead,
Mm-hmm.
Graciela.
No, yeah, I'm feeling overwhelmed, and I identify that comes from like not knowing, like being annoyed and not knowing
Yes,
what to do with that.
definitely. These are one of the reasons. Siobhan, anything in the chat that you can
Yeah,
see?
so we have some folks saying, well, me saying, because the future is uncertain, because people are
Right.
dying, because it's one thing after another. I feel like I have no control, anxious and unemployed because of COVID.
Yes, absolutely. You guys are saying what a lot of us are feeling, right? And let's see, I see that Isidora, you have your hands up. Do you have any reasons why?
Yeah, I mean, it's just watching people die from COVID, like watching innocent Black lives. Like it's and feeling very helpless in both scenarios.
Yes.
Yeah, I, I just, it's hard not to think about it, especially
Yeah.
when epidemics are happening at once.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing this with us in the chat box, but also Graciela and Isidora, right? Who can tell us what they've been doing when they think about all the reasons why they feel that primary or secondary emotions? How are you taking care of yourself so that you can share with the group? Don't be shy. Okay, I see Jorge. Let's see, okay, go ahead, Jorge. What have
I
you
don't.
been?
So I'm feeling anxious, especially because things in California are taking a turn to the worse, and because everything happening with systemic racism and police brutality. Also, as a teacher, I worried for the students that I had. I was also very worried on how to approach the topic because my students are 10, 11 years old, and and but because we're in summer right now, I think I'm starting to deal with it by keeping busy. It may not be the most healthy way to do it, but I'm also seeing some of these ways are might help address a problem. But
Yes.
for example, I uh, decided to participate in a focus group to see how to reopen the school. I'm taking an optional class through my university about how to deal with everything that's going on in the classroom, especially how to talk about racism in the classroom. And I
Yes.
also decided to do summer school, to teach summer school. So right now, I think the way I'm dealing with the emotions is by trying to find a distraction.
Thank you so much for sharing, Rory, right? And I'm gonna even push back to the idea that you are doing this for distraction, right? That's kind of your part of yourself that is so used to shaming what you do, is trying to tell you, oh, this is not good enough. Think about this. You are doing your best, right? And that's what matters. What I want you to do is not to say, I'm distracted, but to be self-aware, but also intentional, right? With all the things or steps or activities you're taking, right? Then you can feel that connection, and literally you can see that I am doing something. I'm not just distracting myself. And all of you guys, think about it today, all of you beautiful souls are here. So sharing this space is because you're committed to not just taking care of yourself, but to address all these issues. Siobhan, do you see anything in the chat?
I do not. I do
Okay.
not.
So thank you guys for sharing. So let's go to the other step, right? I want you to ask yourself and write it down in your notebook. Does this emotion belong to me? That's a little bit a weird question, right? I'm gonna unpack that. I love to use the word baggage. I want you to write in the chat or in your notebook or journal. I want you to write, what is my cultural baggage? What is my family baggage? What is my personal baggage? What is my spiritual baggage? What is my emotional, psychological, and even physical baggage, right? So let's digest that step a little bit better. So here I'm gonna share maybe an example. This is a self-disclosure for myself, right? For me, when I say, does this emotion belong to me, I have to make connection with my cultural baggage. So remember, you guys, we are living in a pandemic, right? But also we're living in a state where racism is taking over. I remember when I saw the killing of George, just like all of you guys, I was angry. That was my secondary emotion, right? I had to make connection to find out my primary emotion, which was really sadness and grief, right? Then I had to think about my cultural baggage, not just as a Black woman, right? As an African woman who has lived the Black experience. So I went down the space where I can remember, right? A space of not belonging. Those were all the reasons why I was angry. In order for me to unpack, I have to be aware of that. So please share with us, what is some of the baggage you've been dealing with when you think about the emotion that you are wanting to unpack? It could be grief, it could be anger, sadness. So who is willing and feel comfortable to share with us? Siobhan can check and see in the chat if she sees anything.
Yeah, checking the chat. In the meantime, I can share.
Yes.
I think for me, my cultural baggage, obviously, it's one, I've experienced racism, but I think also on the emotional piece, I've never been taught how to really manage or even talk about my feelings.
Mm-hmm.
My personal baggage is that I experience a lot of anxiety. And I also have been, in some ways, groomed to always feel this need to achieve or always to be doing something. Stillness is not something that I had ever been taught is a good thing growing up. So.
Thank you so much, Siobhan. I did see that Fiona had some clapping, and then Graciela. Do you guys want to share anything with us?
Sure. Good morning.
Good morning, Fiona.
for me, definitely the personal. I don't always see it as baggage, but when anniversaries come up of loved ones that I've lost, it's a heaviness. I try to celebrate their life, but I definitely feel it, and I know that depression and deep sorrow and just managing it all and recognizing that it's love, that has definitely been a form of something that I carry. And especially with current events, for me, just seeing what's happening and feeling connected to it, all of these Black souls who have been killed, and feeling as if it's hard. Every time you catch your breath, there's one more. And I never want to become desensitized to it, but I'm always trying to catch my breath in a sense that another one and another one and another one. And I want to honor their memories too. So it becomes very difficult at times because every life matters, and it feels like a weight, but I want to make sure that I acknowledge it, that I spread the awareness. But that's something that's been really on my heart. That's just really
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Fiona. And when Fiona was talking, I just felt it. And I know all of you guys are feeling, because we are all interconnected, right? We are feeling all these emotions. And I love the word she said. I don't know if you guys heard, she said, I feel the weight, right? No wonder why we talk about baggage, right? When you don't pay attention, there's an emotional weight, psychological weight. Sometimes it's even physical weight. You grieving, it shows up as a baggage in all these different facets of your life. Okay, so that's good. Thank you, Fiona, for trusting us with those emotions. Anyone else, Siobhan, that you can see in the chat room or just raising their hand?
I don't see anyone in the chat. I don't see anyone raising their hands. I think only
Okay, thank you so much. So I have another question that I ask: who is showing up, right? When you're thinking about unpacking those emotions. Again, self-disclosure, and then I can go back to you. For me, when I have a crisis, do you know who usually shows up? Is my 16-year-old self. I want you to think and write it down. When you think who's showing up, I want to use you. Think about your life in different stages, right? Maybe there's Isidora at 5, and then at 15, at 20, 30, and so on. Which one of the Isidora are showing up? Mine, when I say which one of the Kerry shows up, my 16-year-old self, because guess what? She's the one who at 16 experienced for the first time that she may die. She saw really people dying, and she understood that at any point her life can stop, right? She saw war. This 16-year-old girl, she's very angry at times. Guess what? She's also one who has poverty consciousness, because she has experienced having it all and everything being taken away in just just like that. It was gone. So when the pandemic hit, guess what? Who showed up? She did. But because I've learned to love her and to invite her, I didn't say, shut up. What is wrong with you? I talked to her. I said, you know what, baby girl, I understand where you're coming from. You are scared. So I had to take her hand with me. I had to mother her. Remember, you have to parent your inner child or your adolescent self or your young adult self, so that person can feel safe. We're so used to silencing those parts of ourselves. So please share with us who has been showing up, what part of you, at what age that person or that soul has been showing up. Siobhan is going to check who has their hands up and also the chat section for us.
All right. Some folks are not sure. I said 15-year-old me, Fiona, 19-year-old me. He said
Yes.
22-year-old me, 14-year-old me.
Mm,
Not sure, Jorge. That's okay.
yes. Thank you. I love, that's the thing. A lot of us have not thought about that perspective, you know? Like Jorge was just honest. He said, I don't know. And some of you say my 14, my 15, my 16-year-old self. All I want you to do is just ponder on that, right? After this, when you create a safe place for yourself, just start to unpack and see who's showing up for you. But then be really clear about accepting that person. Provide a space of comfort and love, not of shaming and judging, right? Because again, you have to be the parenting love, right? So the next step, I want you to ask this question: what can I control versus what I cannot control? I want you to write it down, right? We're living in a pandemic. Guess what? All of us, really, when it comes to the pandemic, even understanding the coronavirus, the way it works, we do not have a lot of control over that. But what do we have control over? We can practice, you know, risk reductions, like washing our hands, social distancing, wearing masks, right? This is just an example of some of the grief we're going through. So share with us, share with the group if you feel safe. When you think about your grief or the emotion, what do you feel you have control over versus what you feel you don't have control over? And Siobhan is going to check again the chat room to see if anything. And raise your hand. We'll see if she can share with us.
Yeah, so we have Fiona. She said she has control of organizing her space, keeping it clean and clear. Okay.
Who else would like to share what they have control over? And even if you don't share it with us, I hope you're writing it down, because it will be a great step for you after a session to just unpack on your own or with your therapist.
We've got some new ones. Isadora, I have control over being able to approach my anxiety with medication, therapy, and friendship.
Mm-hmm.
Karen, she has control over her self-care, but not over triggers. Graciela, I have control over how other people see me. Izzy, this is happening for the first time for me. Ashley, what I give my time to, taking a break from social media, being thankful for what I do have. Graciela, I can't control how or if people understand me.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. I love when Siobhan is reading all this, because guess what? I can feel it. Again, we have such a universal experience within our personal experience. Let's go to the next step. I want you to be subjective, right? And to be objective in order to find balance. Right? What does that mean? You know, when we just speak in the English language, I can say, you know what, Siobhan, you're being very subjective right now. It means that I'm telling Siobhan that she's being partial, she's taking side. But when we talk emotions, don't think that way. Subjective, it just means that I feel this way. You are talking about your lived experience, right? You are entitled to feel that way. Guess what? If Graciela tell me today, I feel sad, who am I to tell her, no, you should feel hopeful? How dare, right? She's saying, I am sad today. That's her lived experience. So she's being subjective. Rightfully so. I have to tell you, though, when we think about emotions, we have to find a space of balance. Sometimes we can be too subjective or too objective, right? So let's give an example, and then you can share with us. Let's just say you've been feeling depressed for a while, right? You are in that process of grieving. So today you wake up, you unable to even eat or take a shower. Guess what? You're being subjective. You're entitled to feel that way. Then tomorrow you ask yourself, I still feel sad. Should I do something? You're like, nope. I'm gonna go back to sleep. I'm not gonna take a shower. Guess what? Because I feel sad. And then a week from now, you're still in that situation. Now it's becoming very dangerous because you're going in that deep spaces of despair. Next thing you may call your therapist or a friend, you're just lashing out, you're saying, you know what? I feel like I'm going to take my own life because I have been sad for days, right? That can happen to any of us. So I want you to start talking to your emotions. When you're being too subjective, I want you to think of yourself outside of yourself in that moment. I say tap into your resiliency. Remind yourself in the past, what is a space where I felt this emotion, but I was able to come out of it, right? Invite that part of you so that you can go and be helped through the process to find balance, right? If I use my 16-year-old self, remember she's the one who has a fear of insecurity. She's the one who has experienced death. She's the one who has experienced trauma. Guess what? At the same time, when I'm being too subjective, I also call her. I tap into her. You know why? Because she's also the young girl who is very resilient. She's the young girl who led me to this woman right now who can talk to you guys about emotions. Why? She's a survivor. So tell me, thinking about your emotions, I want you to share with us, what do you do when you're subjective? What do you do when you're objective so that you can find balance? Siobhan is going to check.
We have a question. Can you describe what objective means in this context again?
Yes, absolutely. So being objective is, I'm going to give you an example. Do you know when a good friend of yours called you and you tell them, you know what, I'm feeling sad, and you're that good friend, right? What you're going to tell that person, you're going to say, you know what, Fiona, I hear you. I know you've been through. That's you acknowledging the emotions, right? So being subjective, you can tell Fiona, listen, girl, do you remember last year we went through this? I respect the fact that even when you're sad, you are very good about sharing your emotions. You always take care of your children, right? You are always there for other people. See, Fiona, when she hears it, you're giving her a different perspective, right, of her emotions. But guess what? Not all of us have that person to tell us. So you have to be those two voices for yourself. I feel this way, being subjective. Being objective is saying, is this the first time I've been through this emotion? You're going to realize this is not the first time. So make a connection when you've been through the emotion and you were able to overcome it. Right?
Got it. So what we've got in the chat, we've got Bennett, I'm way too objective, or push away my ability to be subjective and allow myself to feel my feelings.
Yes.
So that's like the other side of it, is just always trying to not feel the feelings. Isadora, I'm starting to feel objective when I get into a depressive episode. Graciela said, me too. Jorge said, I'm not sure if I'm very subjective with myself. I tend to be more objective with myself, but that leads to making me feel like I need to suppress my feelings instead of feeling them. Jorge, you and I are twin flames on this.
Yes. Thank you so much for sharing. You can see many of you, all of us have to work into finding that balance. A lot of us have to find that good dance. It's like tango, right? Between being too objective, when you're too objective, you are in your emotions. You can get out of it. When you're being too objective, you may be creating this false sense of being too hopeful, right? Just saying things that sounds good, but is not real. And Jorge mentioned sometimes he's too objective. Sometimes you're too objective, you can just numb your emotions. You don't have the ability to make that deep connection, right? So good, you guys are doing awesome. So keep writing it down, right? Then the last step, I want you to ask, what is my biggest need at the moment? Because remember, if we're talking about grief, about anger, sadness, any emotion, I want to teach you to take it one day at a time. Think about the present. Because if you think too much about the past, the future, you're losing yourself, right? I love Lao Tzu is a philosopher. He says people who are stuck in the past are depressed. People who are stuck in the future are anxious. And people who live in the present can find peace. How wonderful is that, right? So when we think about balance and peace, I want you to think about the moment. Think about your five senses, right? Okay, so our five senses, we have sight, touch, hearing, taste, and smell. I like to call this grounding of self. You know why? When you are inside of your head, your emotions, you don't feel grounded, you feel out of control. Why? So thinking about the five senses, share with me and pick any sense that you want to share or to commit today that you can practice after this session, even while we're doing this session. What can you do to ground yourself? Siobhan is going to check for us the chat section.
Yeah, we have a few more comments. Tiffany said that she's learning to be objective with journaling. Graciela had a question: how do you hold on to that moment when you get there? And Isadora uses touch, so cold water, to ground herself. But Graciela said, how do you hold on to that moment when you get there?
And Graciela, are you saying when you get to what? Can you clarify to what emotion?
Or like when you are able to ground yourself.
Yes. So when you're able to ground yourself, Graciela, I just want you to be in a space of no judgment. Get out of your head and start feeling your five senses, right? And it is hard for us because we are human. We like to think. So I know Bore, I think, talk about water, right? So find a way to turn off your mind if you can, just using the five senses. And I will say, stay put in there. When you have a thought that is not empowering you, talk to it and say, right now I'm choosing to just breathe, or to just drink my cup of tea by being intentional, or by just watching the beautiful sunset. Graciela, do you think I answered your question?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I think
Yeah.
that for me, like that makes sense logically, but I'm not sure how to do that.
Yes. And you know what Graciela is saying is the truth, right? What I can advise Graciela and all of us who go through this is practice. Remember, with practice, we get better. I'm sure, Graciela, you have something, a skill that you had to build over time, right? Can you tell me that skill that you really put effort into, and now you're probably an expert, or you're good at it?
I'm really good at researching, I guess.
There you go. So you put commitment to that. So don't say, I have to know it right away. Give yourself to practice, okay? And then you can take classes. Some of us, maybe grounding of self is not the five senses. Maybe it's the spiritual space, right? Maybe for you, depending on your, again, on your belief, you go there. And some of us, we need to take a class maybe with Siobhan, just sweat it out so that we don't think too much, okay? So the next one, we're gonna do a resource strengthening exercise, right? This one, my favorite, it is a Hawaiian practice called Ho'oponopono, right? It just means make right or make it right. I'm gonna give you the few steps of this practice. You can use it not just for grief, you can use it for effective communication skills. So the first step is saying, I am sorry. You may ask yourself, what am I supposed to be sorry for when I'm talking about grief? Remember the example that I gave you? If my 16-year-old self comes back, I don't say, get the heck out of here. Sometimes I'll say, I'm sorry I didn't pay attention to you yesterday when you show up. And you can say, please forgive me. Please forgive me that sometimes I try to silence you over and over. And maybe it is a loved one who has left you, the passed on. Guess what? I want you to talk to them. And then find a space where you can say thank you. And thank you can be the memory of that person. It could be the memory of that experience. And I want you to remember that love is very important to us, right? So who can definitely practice Ho'oponopono with us? By going through the steps, right? Siobhan is gonna check and see if there's anyone raising their hand or even in the chat box.
I can go ahead.
Okay, go ahead, Fiona.
Yeah, definitely for me, thinking about my younger self,
Yes.
especially as a teenager, and just letting them know it's okay because I was always on the hamster wheel, keep going and going and going when I should have took time to grieve the various deaths. So this is just, I like this approach because it's giving myself space to say, hey, when you were young, you didn't know you were supposed to grieve. You didn't know you needed that time. You thought, oh, I got to keep going, got to keep getting good grades, got to go to this club, got to do that. But now I know I'm liking this reconciliation and forgiveness. Yeah.
And remember, Fiona, and all of us, it's not just with others. You have to start with self.
Right.
You cannot expect people to treat you the way you don't treat yourself, right? So that's good. Thank you for sharing. Siobhan, do you see anyone else who can go through Ho'oponopono process?
I don't see anyone just yet, but
Yes.
if there's anyone who wants to give it a shot, you know, feel free to unmute yourselves. I know that
Yes.
people are taking time to process right now.
Absolutely. And remember, again, it doesn't matter if you can speak up right now. The fact that you're taking a note is going to help you to process, right? And we're going to finish with breathing, right? The reason why in my practice, it doesn't matter with my client or with myself, every day I have to do breath work, right? Because it helps me. Remember, Graciela was like, how am I supposed to do this all the time? With practice, you can ground yourself. I want you guys to just kind of start to finish our session, to put your right hand on your heart, on your beautiful heart, right? And then I want you to put your left hand on your belly. The reason why I say that, because our darkest and scary fears come from inside of us and it goes up. We're gonna take three deep breaths. I want you to just relax, close your eyes, and I'm gonna tell you to open later, okay? Inhale. Exhale. Inhale. Exhale. Last one. Inhale. Exhale. Thank you so much. Okay, beautiful souls. Thank you for giving me this space. I'm gonna ask you guys, tell me, you can contact me whenever you need me or you have any questions. I'm gonna give you a homework today. After all this, what is your intention for the rest of the day? Who can share with us? I know my intention, I'm gonna start is to be grateful because I'm starting this day with all of you from all these different spaces. I'm gonna keep that grateful space for myself. What is your intention for today?
My intention for today is to take my time.
I love that. Anyone else? You can unmute yourself and share.
I think
My intention for
sorry, go ahead.
I think my intention for today is to be able to do something mindless. I think I've been overthinking in an overdrive for the last couple of days, so I just want to like do something that allows me to touch and just melt into just doing something mindless.
Okay. Thank you. Siobhan, anyone that you still would like to share the intention of today?
Yes, Jorge, he put his intention for today is to allow himself to relax.
Oh, I love that.
Yes.
Anyone else?
My intention is to get all of my overwhelming thoughts out of my head. So I'm going to journal.
Yes.
Karen's intention is to be creative. Graciela, she will try to find some grace for herself.
Absolutely. I really appreciate you guys. Again, you can visit my website at www.Soul-AffirmingLLC.com. Of course, if you don't live in Alabama, if you need wellness coaching, you need an astrology reading, a natal chart report, anything that you need, or you need more resources like books on grief, just let me know. And I also have a YouTube channel called Fleury's Fleur. I use this to unpack my emotions, all right? So please check me out. You can subscribe, like, share, and comment. And don't forget to utilize the grills and granola space. I think it's a space that's very healing for all of us, okay? Just take advantage. If you don't have any other additional questions, I thank you. And just know I see you and we're not alone. We are in this together, okay? Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much, Kerry, and thank you all for joining. I have recorded the session, however, to protect other people's privacy. I'm going to edit out some of the more personal stories because I respect everyone who attended and I respect your stories. Also, if you look at your email confirm when you signed up and say you can't remember Kerry's site, it's linked in that email confirmation, so you can get all that information. It's already in your email. Otherwise, have a great day. Give yourself grace. You've already done something for yourself today just by attending this session.
Thank you. Take care. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.